turn this up.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Glad that everybody was able to join us today. This call is being recorded so that we can put this out for folks that might have missed it. Just want to start off with a few reminders, kind of ground rules for the call. If you'll be sure and mute yourself, that would be great, just so that we don't have any feedback or distractions that come through as our presenters are talking. So just double check and make sure you're muted. And then also, hopefully you know about the chat feature, but if you'll open up the chat, you'll see at the very top, there's actually a link to a couple of resources that are going to be mentioned during the call today that you might want to reference at some point. And then there's also a list of books that Scott has provided that are maybe helpful resources if you want to do some further reading around our topic. And today's topic is going to be on fundraising in the midst of the pandemic. So, maybe some of you have been raising support for a while and you just have some questions about the new challenges that it presents. And others of you maybe are coming into a season where you're going to have to start fundraising or fundraising at a higher level than you have before, whether for your personal salary support or for ministry support. And so we brought several folks onto the call today that kind of have a variety of experiences with that we want to be able to share with you guys. And then we're going to leave some time at the end for Q&A. So also in the chat, if you have questions along the way, just go ahead and put those in the chat. And once we get to the end and begin the Q&A time, I'll pull questions from the chat and probably kind of call on you to ask your question. So would love for you to put those questions in the chat as they come up as some of our speakers are sharing. But we'll go ahead and get started with our first presenter. Our first man up is Steve Shadrack. Steve is for missions mobilization, as well as a variety of other organizations that he's has been a consistent throughout is his commitment to college ministry and to serving college ministers and ministering to college students. So we're really excited that he is on the call today. He's also does a ton with helping, especially I think, college ministry leaders raise support around the country. And so he's going to share some thoughts with us to kick us off this morning. So Steve, take it away.
Thanks, Bill, for having me. And I think it is important we all move ourselves. I'm hoping some of my grandkids don't run in on me. I've got a bunch of them here at the compound is what we call it. Probably wouldn't be the word to use down in the Waco area, but this is what we look like in Arkansas, friends. This is the hillbilly hermit look. If you're thinking about stereotyping any Arkansans, okay? I do have my teeth in today, so that's a plus. But I love being with you guys, especially if you're a campus worker, but even if you're not, I love being with you. The topic today, Bill has said, is support raising. In 37 years, I've been on support. I was a pastor, a collegiate pastor at a church for 4 years and loved that. Realized I wasn't really a pastor. I struggled with some of the pastorly duties and so forth, but did I love college students. And so I wanted to launch out to be involved in reaching students, but of course I needed to raise my own support. And so I had no training, no background, but by God's grace, 6 weeks later, we were at full support. It's amazing what being married and having 3 kids and 1 on the way, Bill, what kind of motivation that provides a man, you know. So I was highly, highly motivated. Maybe some of y'all need some motivation. You single guys get married, that'll do it, I think. But I asked Bill to submit some questions just to kind of get me thinking. I don't do that great in presentations sometimes as much as I do in responding to questions. And so I wanted to read these 3 questions and then give my answers to them. And then if there's something about these thoughts or beyond these thoughts at the Q&A time at the end, I'd be happy to respond. But the first question, isn't everyone really struggling right now? Yes. Is the wisest decision just to stop support raising right now and focus on just ministering to my students? How much should I take my foot off the support raising throttle? Great question. And so, as you all know, ministry certainly certainly, I just covered my screen there. We live in seasons, don't we? I'm 65 years old. Don't tell anybody, but I still live my life in 3 seasons: fall semester, spring semester, summer. I bet most of you do too. But so there's a season to do full-time ministry. There's a season to do full-time support raising. Sometimes half and half. I don't know what season you're in, but whatever season that is in, or if your support supervisor has said you need to raise more support, well then let's embrace it. In my opinion, now is a great time to raise support. You need to change your lens, change your perspective, kind of move it from an obstacle to an opportunity. If life gives you lemons, make lemonade. You've heard that before. But so I wrote down 5 quick thoughts about that, Bill, just about why right now could be a great time for you to launch out and do your support raising. I just got off the call with leaders from every one of the major campus ministry organizations in the country talking about this exact subject. And so it's fresh on my mind. Here are the 5 quick thoughts. Okay, then I'm gonna get to the other 2 questions and then turn it over to our other speaker. Number 1, no one else is asking. Everyone is afraid. Everyone is moved away. Everyone has given up. They decided this is not a good time. So, hey, you may be the only one that is asking. Number 2, they're at home. They have a lot of time. It's not like their packed out schedule won't allow a Zoom call with you. Or one person I saw was having a picnic porch appointment. They bring the food over and sit on the opposite sides of the picnic, have this face-to-face appointment. Number 3, a lot of people aren't familiar with Zoom or Skype. It's kind of a new format for them. There's some uniqueness and variety and novelty about that that's different than a phone call or a text. I think that could be a plus. Number 4 is the biggie. When you do meet with someone, here's what I would encourage you to do. When you do have that Zoom call, you want to acknowledge the crisis. Let them know that you understand the challenge and ask them about their family and about their challenges and about what's going on there. But during that appointment, I would transition and I would say, Joe or Sam or Sally, whoever it is, I know this is a very historic juncture in the life of our world and our country and in our economy and so forth. And you may be facing tremendous financial challenges, but I feel more called than ever to reach the world for Christ. And in this window of time, the opportunity is just so great to launch into the ministry here and to take the solution to people's problems right to the forefront. And so I'm unapologetically going to people and laying out our vision and our calling to bring the gospel right now to this lost world. And I just believe that if I can get to full support, if I can get to my ministry assignment, there's going to be more openness than we've ever seen before. So this is a prime time. And so I'm asking you, even in this challenging time, to consider stretching out there and standing with me and partnering with me to get me to full support and get me to my assignment. So that's the kind of attitude and approach and script I would use. Number 5, I think they'll be impressed with your boldness. I think they'll be impressed with your initiative in the midst of all these challenges while everybody else is hunkered down. No. You're not gearing down. You're gearing up, and you're embracing this with great faith and prayer and gusto. And so I think that they will be very impressed with that. The second question, Bill, that you mentioned, I've been in a fully funding position, but all that has changed last week. All of a sudden, I'm in a situation where I have to raise my salary if I'm going to continue this ministry position. What are the first 3 things I should do? Well, first of all, I would praise God that He has chosen you to be the key person in your relational network to mobilize them. those 100 or 200 people that you know that are in your life and around your life there, now he has plopped you right in the middle of those people, and no one is going to be setting up appointments with them over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, but you sharing about the Great Commission, asking them to partner. I've come to the conclusion that personal support raising is the greatest mobilization tool that God ever invented. And so I would praise him, first of all, for even choosing you to allow you to be the mobilizer in your relational network. Number two, I would thoroughly read a book. Here's an excellent book by Scott Morton. If y'all familiar with Funding Your Ministry by Scott Morton, he's kind of my mentor. And there's great Bible studies in the back. I've also got a book called The God Ask. I would read those thoroughly. I would do every single aspect of those Bible studies. The third thing I would do is I'd get some training, either in person or virtual training. There's different options, not many around the country, but if you went to supportraisingsolutions.org, you'd get some great in-person training. Don't cut any corners on this, friends. Really do the homework, do the preparation, do the Bible study, examine your calling, think deeply, and prepare deeply for this. The third question, and I'll finish here, Bill, and turn it over to the next one. You've written here, I'm a minister at heart and I want to care for my donors right now. Isn't the most caring thing I can do for them is to let them off the hook. I assume you're saying you don't need to support me any longer or right now. What are some practical ways that I can care for them right now? Even those who have Southern Baptist funding streams, how can they care for churches and individuals who give regularly to their ministries? Well, yes, if you are a veteran support raiser, the worst thing you can do is go silent, go dark on this thing. I would go to each person, reach out to them, preferably a phone call or a Skype call, a Zoom call, and ask them questions about their lives, their families, what pressures they're feeling, what they're praying about, what you can pray for them, with them about. Thank them for partnering with you. Now, in just 2 or 3 instances, friends, as I'm on the phone with someone and they've lost their job or they're feeling tremendous financial pressures, I've said this. I've said, Kurt, bro, if you need to pause your giving for a period of time to us, we will completely understand. I don't use the word cancel or quit. I use the word pause. If you need to pause your giving to us for a period of time, we will completely understand. And that has been meaningful to 2 or 3 people and has taken the pressure off. They haven't taken me up on it, but I think it was meaningful that I would say that. I'm not saying do that with everyone, but there may be certain people that you could do that with. Okay, I'll stop there, Bill, and I'll wait for any questions at the end on this topic, okay?
Great. Thank you so much, Steve, for joining us and kind of sharing from your years of experience. And like Steve said, he'll be around still at the end. If you have specific questions for him, drop those in the chat and we'll come back to those after a couple other people share. But next up, we have Scott Belmore. Scott used to be a college minister in Louisiana. Now he is in Alaska with Mosaic at the University of Alaska. And he is actually on the ground doing college ministry, raising his support. And so I think it'll be helpful to hear from him just some of the maybe changes that he's put in place right now, or just how he's dealing with raising support right in the midst of this pandemic. So Scott, thanks for joining us and take it away.
Thanks, Bill. One of the things that I'm going to kind of share about a little bit today is just, attitude and perspective, because I think right now in the midst of everything, even as somebody who is in the middle of support raising and has been doing it, I think sometimes in situations like this, our attitude and our perspective can be challenged a little bit in this. And I think we heard a little bit of that from Steve, just in some of the things that he mentioned with contacting some of his supporters and the thing that I thought about whenever I first stepped into this role, as far as having to raise my support, when God was calling us out of Louisiana to Alaska, man, the thing that I thought was, man, I wish I didn't have to do this. I wish I didn't have to do this. This is not something that I was anticipating, expecting. Steve, like you said, I was 42 years old. I had a wife, I had 2 kids, and I'm thinking, man, what in the world am I going to do? But now, I couldn't imagine not raising support. I think it has just completely changed my perspective on what it is and how we can do ministry and even, push forward in that. And so Henry Nouwen says this, when we think about ministry and we think about, is support raising ministry? How does that going to impact, or how will that set us back in ministry? He says this, he says, fundraising is first and foremost a form of ministry. It is a way of announcing our vision and inviting other people into our mission. And I think when we have that attitude and perspective, that this is a part of our ministry. It's not just an added onto, it's not just something else that we have to do that's so begrudgingly of us but it's actually a part of our ministry and what we get to do. And so I want to just share a couple of quick attitudes I think that we need to have for us that are in it, for those who are beginning, and those that have yet to answer the call to it. And so I think the 8 attitudes that we need to have is, first, we need to understand who we are. We're children of the King. And when we realize who we are, our attitude will reflect those facts. But we don't do it with a brash confidence. We do it with a quiet, calm assurance and confidence in God himself. The second thing I think we need to look at is that we must constantly have the attitude that everything belongs to the Lord. Therefore, we should not be afraid, even in this time right now, to ask individuals if they would be willing to partner with us so that we can get out and do the work that God's called us to on the field. Our third attitude should reflect the urgency of the time that we live in. Never before has there been such a need for harvesters. I've heard Paul Wooster say that over these past couple weeks, that, man, this is such a great opportunity for us, doing digital evangelism, doing digital Bible studies, doing all these things, and how that's going to help impact. There has never been such a need for harvesters right now, and there's a desperate need for laborers to actually go out. And so as God calls you out, understand, and the attitude that you need to have is that the urgency of the time we live in is now. And the fourth would be that we have no higher calling than serving God full time. And what more significant work could we have than affecting lives for eternity for the King? I think the fifth attitude we need to see is that that investing in God's work is a privilege for our investors. Nowhere could an investor get better mileage out of the dollar. I was looking at some things just this past week, and man, if you want to start investing money right now, like, your return rate is going to be incredibly low. And so, like, the money that your partners would be willing to get behind you to help you with, they're going to get more bang for their buck in serving and supporting God through giving to missions. And the thing is that we can't repay our investors, but we know God will, and he can. The sixth attitude that I would say is that we have one of a quiet assurance and confidence in God's character, in God's promises, in God's call. If we can trust God with our salvation, shouldn't we also be able to trust him for the ministry partners, the funds, to fulfill his call that he has on our life? And then the eighth thing is that we expect results. We go in expecting results. When you pray for something, and you want to see God move in that. And so when you pray about meeting with these individuals, you're expecting God to move in the life of that person. And so these are just some key attitudes that I think that we need to have as individuals that are raising support, that are looking at raising support, that are that may not yet have been called out to raise support. But Bill, right now for us, some of the things that we're doing, Steve, I watched your video that you talked about the other day, as far as like some of the questions that you answered. Should we be asking people, what do? We ask them to pause. What are some things? one of the main things that I try to do with all of our partners is to try to stay in contact with them. I want to try to communicate with them as best as I can, and I do not want to neglect that. And so since things have happened, that's been one of the things that I have been trying to do, is just to remain in contact with our people. We had one lost his job. I saw him posted on Facebook. He lost his job. I called him up. I said, "Hey man, listen, I completely understand if you need to do this." He said, "Scott, I've already told my wife." He said, "There's two things that I'm not cutting in our budget, even though we've lost our job." He said, "One, we're not cutting our tithes to the church." He says, "And two, we're not cutting our giving to the work that you're doing in Alaska." And I mean, that was just a huge blessing to hear him say that. I was trying to call to give him a way out, to let him pause or whatever he needed to do in this time frame. But that's not what happened. The other thing is just to appreciate your people. Say thank you in so many different ways. For us, when we travel home and we visit with our friends, some of the things that we do is, I had one guy tell me early on, he said, "Scott, don't ever send me some little keychain or something with your logo on it, because I don't want my money going to waste." And I said, "Okay, what can I do to help appreciate my ministry partners?" Well, being in Alaska, man, we have some of the best seafood up here. And so when I go out fishing or whatever, and I harvest that stuff, I bring that home. And so they're getting fresh salmon caught from, Alaska ocean, and saying, "Thank you for what you're doing." So appreciate it, and then cultivate them. Because I think that's very important for us to continue to cultivate those relationships with those individuals, and invite them. And by cultivating them, you're inviting them to get more involved. And so, Bill, those are some of the things that we're doing right now, just to make sure in this season, when things are tough, even though things are tough, God still has great plans, and that's what we're looking forward to in what we're doing, as well as in the relationships that we're hanging on to and building. So thanks, man.
Great. Well, thanks, Scott, for sharing. And again, Scott's going to be on here at the end, so drop questions in the chat if you have those. And then lastly, we've got Daryl Cook with us today. He's going to share just for a few minutes. And Daryl is the BCM director at Virginia Tech. And one of Daryl's specialties is really creating an alumni support network to help fund his salary and their ministry. And so I know he even, I think, has something to share, kind of something unique that they did just in the last few weeks as a result of the crisis. And so Daryl, thanks for joining us, and go ahead and share with us some thoughts.
Thanks, Bill, and honored to have a couple other heroes on the panel. Steve has been a guy that I've looked forward to any resource he's put out there. The God Ask is just a fundraising standard, so thank you, Steve. And Scott, so funny you brought up fish, because is under your hospitality, I had the best fish dinner I've ever had in my life. So another hero, but a different kind of hero there in Steve and Scott. But so couple of areas that I want to share. Again, as Bill said, my area is alumni. So a lot of my focus will be on more toward groups than individuals. I do some individual asks, but a lot will be focused on groups and specifically alumni, and then some broader supporters beyond that. I've been doing regional meetings the last 3 years. Started the first year of that just in different towns and cities around our state, gathering alumni who lived in that area when I was close to there. And then realized we have so many alumni that were in different southeastern cities around in the southeastern part of the United States. So we did that over the last couple of years, and those have been great. 8 to 15 of those folks come together, and out of that, a lot of those are already folks who are giving, and then some others become givers out of those visits. And had several planned for the spring. And in April, I had Charlotte and Roanoke, and I canceled both of those. And as I look back, I wish I had not. Well, not really canceled. We postponed them to the fall, but I wish I had done them by Zoom, because we've done a lot more with alumni and other connections, not just students, but done a lot of other supporter connections to Zoom since then. I canceled those pretty early, but if I had to do that again, I would not have moved those to the fall. We've had some great connections already. This coming weekend, we've got another one with some some mid to late 80s alums that they initiated, but I'm going to crash part of it and talk to them about what God's doing right now in our ministry. So a lot of things like that are happening, and there are a ton of opportunities to connect. Look for chances to get alumni together from the same era, and maybe even get more specific. Like I was thinking about international mission teams from different years, getting that group back together. I see Arliss on there. Arliss, let's get together the 1995 Jamaica team. It's going to be great. But anyway, gathering those teams together, and they will love reminiscing, and then you'll have a chance to share with them about what God has been doing and is doing in your ministry, and maybe even specifically in more mission mobilization parts of what you do. And that's a huge part of how we develop some of the things we're doing here is that emphasis on the fact that we're mobilizing students and preparing church leaders of the future who are on mission all the time. And getting those groups together is huge because, again, like it's been said multiple times, there's so many opportunities right now. People have their evenings available, and your stories about what God is doing and has been doing are a lot more exciting than Netflix. And you got to realize that, and you got to take advantage of those chances. Because even a lot of these regional gatherings we've done have been on the weekends. Some have been weekdays, but you can, any weekday, any weekend night, you can throw something out there and get a group together. A friend of mine in FCA started to get a Zoom meeting together, and some of his supporters kind of took the meeting over, just with even more inquisitive parts of asking what he was doing. And they said, we got to do this prayer time for you. And it just pulled them in a deeper level that my friend did not expect. So take those opportunities, especially now as the semester is ending and your own Zoom competence is through the roof, right? You guys are experts. Get your alumni together in that format. One other thing I'd share is that we did, as Bill mentioned, we did something creative and different. And that's the second thing, is not just find excuses to get those alums together and or other supporters by Zoom, but do something creative and different. And you can let it be out of something you've had to cancel. If you've had some other fundraising idea that just hasn't been able to work because of the at-home days, find a creative way to still make it work, reinvent it. For us, we don't do a spring fundraising banquet, but a lot of people do. And we took an idea that I stole from probably sometime in the 1990s from a Mississippi Baptist Student Union. They did an event called, I believe it's called Not Another Banquet. John Grisham still lived in Mississippi then, and they had John Grisham pay to not be the speaker for the event. And a lot of people would then they'd say, hey, not another banquet. You don't want to go to another banquet, do you? Just pay to not come to this one. So we did a similar thing, basically, since we can't gather anyway, and who wants to eat mass-produced food for a large group right now? So we did the unbanquet and sold untickets for $25 each. And we just put it out there on Facebook, Instagram. Supporters that knew us, our students, alumni, and it wasn't huge. I mean, I thought it could have been bigger. We sold 120 tickets. So that was $3,000 for a relatively easy idea, and it was fun. It got people's attention. So with that, we ran with that little opportunity. And another part I'm excited about that though is who dove in. I'm a bit of a statistics nerd, so bear with me right here. Of the folks that bought tickets, of those 120 people that bought tickets, 10% were parents and friends of our ministry, 28% were students, 38% were alumni who had given before, and then lastly, 23% were alumni who had never given to us before. And I'm excited about all 120, but that last 23% I'm really excited about, because the people who do fundraising analysis tell you that your next gift is most likely to come from someone who has given before, right? And so for that 23%, what that event did is it helped them take a little step of faith. And I say this because it happens all the time. When we have someone that becomes a monthly giver that has not been a monthly giver before, it is quite common to hear from them when they'll say something like, I've been meaning to do this for a while. And they have, and they just haven't taken that step. And that's why our asking is so important, whether it's in fun ways, direct ways, whatever. We can help them jump out there and do what I call a sense of finding them ways to grab onto the initiative they were meaning to take in the first place, right? And you're giving them that excuse to do that. And I'm praying for that 23% that, in that step, some of them may be able to go, okay, wow, I can trust God with his provision for me. I can trust God in his ability to provide for the ways I can provide for other ministries out there. So that's another part of what happens there. So in that, keep finding ways to invite folks into your partnerships of giving and into what the mission of what God's called you to do on the campus and all the ways that you're loving and reaching students for Jesus Christ. So just a couple ideas.
Awesome. Thank you, Daryl. Those were some great ideas. If any of y'all know any Virginia Tech alum, maybe reach out to them and let them know. It'd be great to do a fundraiser to get Daryl a comfortable chair so he doesn't have to sit on the floor.
I love the floor. Sitting on the floor is the best, Bill.
But I think, something that you shared in there about the getting together alumni from different eras of the ministry. I just saw just this week, I went to the University of Kentucky, was involved in the BCM there, and there have been several of these where different groups have kind of started coming together and doing some Zoom meetings. And I think one happened last weekend. It was kind of started small and people heard about it and they're like, do it again, we want to come. And so they redid it this weekend and it like blew up. And I think they said they ended up having it for 4 hours because people kept popping in and popping out, and it just kind of became this revolving thing. So I think more and more that kind of stuff is happening, and people are really looking for that right now. And as you're able to connect with those groups, it'd be an easy opportunity to just share an update about the ministry, which I think they would enjoy hearing, and then also gives you an opportunity to make an ask. So that was a awesome thought, Daryl. Also, the unbanquet idea that Daryl shared, at the very top of the chat, there's that link to some resources. The unbanquet is one of the things that's in there. So if you want to see kind of their promotion ideas and some of the Instagram posts and that kind of stuff that they sent out, you can access those there. And I'm sure you can reach out to Daryl if you have additional questions. We've got several more minutes left, so we want to kind of open it up to ask questions. So if you have some questions, go ahead and drop those down in the chat, and we'll kind of highlight some of those and give our presenters, or maybe somebody else on the call wants to jump in and offer some insight. But as those questions are coming up, I want to kind of raise a question. And this one may be more for some of you who are on the call, but I kind of want to focus on just thinking about programming funds for a second. So have you all seen big hits to your programming funding? Do you think that's coming? What are some changes that you're making? What are some ideas that you've had to help kind of bolster some of your programming funds? Is there anybody that wants to share some thoughts on that?
Bill, this is Bruce from Arkansas. I'll tell you that overall, we've done a couple of different things. We're cutting all out-of-state travel. Typical things. We're anticipating at least a 20 to 30% reduction. All of our big events have all been put on hold. Of course, we killed all of our mission trips and all those kind of things. I don't think, for us as a state convention, we're doing okay. I don't think we'll really know until we see what happens in April and May. But honestly, we're just anticipating, there's just going to be some things we have done that we may not can do for a year, maybe two. We'll just kind of do it. Now, that's on the state level. The local guys, same way. That's my biggest concern, is what happens in the local ministry budgets out of the association and churches. So that's where I'm the most worried, is what happens out of the association and church budgets into the local campuses. But I think it's a wait and see.
Anybody else have any thoughts or ideas?
We were surveying, Bill, these different major campus ministry organizations around the country in this call before this call, and asking them, we're getting together monthly or maybe every 3 weeks to try to assess and evaluate as we go, you know. No one has seen any drop off. I thought that was interesting in the giving yet. We're going to check again in 3 weeks, but I thought that was encouraging that there had not been any drop offs, organization by organization yet on personal support or even organizational yet. I don't know what 3 weeks from now will tell, but when tough times come, people tend to quit their charitable giving first. That's kind of optional in their mind. I hate to say it, you pastors or former pastors like me, but they will kind of secretly cut some of their church giving next. But my observation over the years is the last people they will quit on. Maybe Scott mentioned this, I think, is that person that they've been engaged with and partnered with and communicating and praying for months or years, that person that they're giving to on a monthly basis, their personal support, that tends to be the last line of defense, so to speak, in their giving cuts in tough times. So that's one more benefit, I think, for personal support raising.
Well, and I think that's also, one more encouragement to make sure that we're not pulling back during this time, but we're remaining engaged with our ministry supporters and really checking in and giving them updates and maintaining those important connections. It's great.
Hey, I have a question. So we're calling, we in Arkansas campus ministers and then state convention staff as a whole. So we're calling all of our church pastors. We're all calling about 30 pastors a week, just checking in with them. How you doing? How's your church doing? Tell us how we can pray for you. Anything we can put on in a Zoom training session that would help you through the time. I'm hearing almost that the smaller, medium to smaller, let's say below 400 churches aren't experiencing any financial difficulties, but maybe the really big churches are. I'm just curious if that's a trend you guys have seen, is my question.
In Georgia, it's almost more about what part of the state they're in, is one of the trends we're seeing. But we're not seeing now at the state level. They did just make cuts based on projected losses over the next couple of months, because that's going to be a lagging indicator, obviously. However, the anecdotal evidence that we're hearing from churches immediate time is that they're doing okay. Some churches are actually have seen an increase in giving during this time, but yeah, here it's almost based upon what their local economy runs off of. If they've taken a hit because of the job loss in their area, then some are a little more insulated than others.
Yeah, that's a good word. I heard somebody in Texas kind of echoing that sentiment the other day that, as the price of oil continues to tick down, there's regions of Texas specifically that are, that really is affecting churches. I think that's a good word. Also, speaking of Texas, Joe Luna, just, if you didn't see his comment in the chat, was talking about how they had several new donors come on board, and they've really been pushing a vision of restoration that has, I think, sounds like really connected with people and has really helped some of their ministry going forward. Joe, is there anything else you wanted to say about that?
Sure. Well, basically, what we do is obviously based on the gospel of restoration. We see that Christ is the greatest restorer of all. And so that's what we want to bring to our campus. It's a demonstration of the gospel. And so one of the things that we've been communicating a lot with our donors is that right now, as we're contacting students through Zoom, as we're contacting campus administrators, student activities and all these people, a lot of them are hopeless. A lot of them are just like, oh man, like this is the end of everything we know. And so being able to offer restoration has been a huge deal for them has been a huge deal for our students, and helping them to see how with a relationship with Christ they can weather these storms, and that their thought process is different. And so what we've been talking about them with our donors has been, we're needing to find new and inventive ways to get this message out, because we're a small ministry, in South Texas. We don't have a lot of resources, and so we need help in getting this message of restoration to the campus and then to our students all over this.
Hey, Bill, I'd like to make an observation, okay?
Sure. And so basically, then thinking when the fall comes, or whenever things get back to a state where we can meet, what is the state of our campus going to be? And we're trying to stockpile resources and prepare a plan, a vision that is going to meet the need when we get back to putting feet on the ground in the fall, or whenever that time comes. And so we're in the process of that plan. And we're, like Steve Shadrack always says, come up with a budget that meets the vision. So we've got a pretty ambitious vision going, and our responders are responding well to that so far.
Thanks, Joe. I think that's a great reminder, just the unique opportunity that this gives us to kind of reimagine maybe our own vision, but also to cast that out to folks that would want to come on and support. That's great. Okay, Steve Masters, I think you were going to share next.
Yeah, Joe, sorry if I cut in. I lost you for a second there, but I want to share a couple of things. One is, when I first started in collegiate ministry and we started getting financial contributions for our ministry and stuff, Arliss encouraged me to send thank you notes, and he does. I think he does handwritten ones. I type them up and send it to him. But I just think you can't thank people enough for financial contributions. And I'll give you one example. Leslie Ladeau and his wife have been giving money. I've been here 28 years. The first month I was here, they gave a check came in for $312.12. It's never been exact. And they've been giving that every month for 28 years. And I called him and I met him, and he's an Army guy and his wife's an Army, they're both in the Army, and they both send their checks. And anyway, I send this. I know this sounds kind of crazy, but I've sent a thank you letter to them every month whenever that check comes in. I kind of share what different report every time, what's happened in my own life and stuff. But I think you can't thank people enough. That's one thing. Number two is, I think parents is a great source. We're fortunate at LSU. We've got alums. We've been here for a long time. We've got alums have been here 30, 40, 50 years. Some of you guys are out there, you don't have any alums. You may not have an alumni list, but you've got parents. Every student that you've got out there has got a parent. And we receive twice as much income from individual support at LSU from parents as we do from alumni. And so don't be afraid to ask your parents for support, because they care. We've actually had parents give, we have a parent survey. We've had parents, one time we had a parent last year give money before their kid even started school. And so, don't be afraid to go after parents. That's something I would share.
Yeah.
Does it help that you have a national championship there at LSU at all in your fundraising, Steve? Is that a plus, or?
Did that happen last year? Well, I guess that did happen here. Yeah, I didn't bring that up, but I'm sure glad you did.
Don't get him started.
Couldn't hurt. They were giving away money in the end zone after the game. So,
Daryl, do you find your alums are more readily wanting to give to either salaries or to budget, or can you tell a difference?
A lot of our alums the most common giving is as needed for us. With our fundraising platform, we're raising money for our facilities, for staffing, for programming, for mobilizing students on mission, and we have different funds for that that are named after former ministry leaders and some significant students in the history of our ministry. And as needed is the biggest. Our staffing is the second of those funds, and then the others, are in line behind those. But some of that is just the long haul trust that we have here. They give as needed because I think we've been faithful in building that trust over time. So it's hard to know exactly if you said you must give to what you want to give to, what they'd give to. But as needed is our biggest area with staffing sector.
Bill, let me slip in here with a thought too, if I could, on this subject. Am I on?
Yep, you're good.
We get to work with a lot of different organizations. Probably the one we've been able to help the most, one of the largest over the years through this Support Raising Solutions ministry, is FCA. And you all are probably all familiar with FCA, and they've just grown like crazy the last 5 or 6 years in terms of their staff and their funding too. Up until about 6 or 7 years ago, if you know about this group, they relied primarily on events, right? They would have banquets and golf tournaments and auctions, but they were living from event to event. It was a very difficult way to fund your ministry and your salaries, hoping, and then you were spending all your time planning events and never actually getting to the ministry itself. And so we started training all their staff how to raise their personal support one-on-one and so forth. And they've had a tremendous turnaround, but I encourage them not to give up some of the events. Don't do as many events, but to view the events differently. In other words, don't view that banquet as a place you're going to raise a lot of money, or that golf tournament necessarily. Yes, do an excellent job, and yes, ask people to give, but a lot of people are going to give that $100 to cover their steak dinner or something, you know. But use it as an opportunity to create some very warm contacts. Whatever money you make on events, put that towards the general fund. Don't let any individual staff person touch those funds. But now you had 100 people come to your banquet or to your non-banquet that John Gresham didn't speak to or whatever, you know. Hey, those 100 names, friends, those are warm contacts. Scott knows this. Now you dole those out to the appropriate staff person, and now they're setting up one-on-one appointments with people, not to ask for $100 to cover their steak dinner that night. No, for $100 a month, you know, for their personal teams. And so use those banquets as an unbelievable funnel or golf tournament or whatever it is to now issue those out and dole those out to staff for individual appointments. It's a great 1-2 combination, in my opinion. So,
yeah, thanks, Steve. And speaking of events, I think that's one of the hardest things during this season is, you know, everybody's operating with a plan A, B, C, you know, just kind of waiting to see which plan you're going to be able to pull off. And one of the questions in the chat was kind of related to events. Caitlin said they're having both their first alumni and fundraising gathering set for fall 2020. Are people planning events of these sorts in person for the fall? So anybody out there, are you planning similar things for the fall, and are you going forward with those, or are you moving those to a different setting?
Bill, I think like you said, a plan A, B, and C is probably the best way to do things right now. For 19 years, we've had an alumni work weekend every summer, and that's in late June. And so it's really hard for us to know what to do there. So we're working on, okay, what if our governor lifts all the things and it's not a problem to have it? Do we still have it? And in the same way, also, if it's 10 or less, what if, a lot of times we have families with kids and everything. So one of our scenarios is for that Friday and Saturday where they fix up our building and invest in the building and resources here that way. We might say, well, we can just have 10 people here that day and 10 different people on Saturday. Can't bring your kids this year, but if you really want to get that Virginia Tech engineer out of your system and come back and fix the things that our students break during the year, we still want to provide a way to do it. So that's one we're looking at. The other is moving it. I know. So we're looking at about 4 different plans for that for June. For the fall, you know, again, who knows? Schools haven't made that decision of which ones are digital and which ones aren't for the fall. But I would, with the ones that we have, we're going full plan A right now for a couple of reunions. And then if those change, we'll be ready to adjust.
Bill, I think that something that's really important for us to do is to be aware of the history of our ministry on our campus. and find out when are those anniversaries. When are you celebrating your 50th, your 60th? We just celebrated our 80th anniversary. Now it's possible that you won't have an anniversary this coming year as far as one of those markers, but maybe the next year. This gives you a year and a half to prepare for that big 75th anniversary and round up the names of the alumni, who were involved in the ministry back then, making those contacts, talking to the alumni office at the university to get those addresses or get that contact information, and begin to maybe project towards a year and a half away. We're going to have the big celebration. Come join us and build that momentum over the year, because like Daryl said, we just don't know what's going to happen this coming fall. So maybe, looking at that down the road, sometimes we forget about the history of our ministries. And so I think that that's valuable to bring that into our aspect of fundraising. It could create the big bump that we want within our ministry.
Yeah, the other thing kind of related to that too is, if you're familiar with the history, you're familiar with some key people along the way that may be able to help you connect with alumni and key donors that could be big givers. And I'm sure that if anybody wants to give $80 in support of 80 years of ministry at UT Martin, you can send those checks directly to Morgan, and he will make sure it gets to the right place.
We actually did that. We did a focus 80 for 80. And so, yeah, you could definitely use those kind of ways to raise the awareness.
Well, one other question I wanted to bring up to let some folks share. I know a lot of you all do a lot around the topic of missions fundraising, and even though a lot of summer missions trips for this summer have been canceled or postponed, I know some of you are still, in that summer missions fundraising mode and thinking about ways, even if it's, getting funds ready for next summer. Anything you've done kind of unique the end of this semester to help raise funds for missions, or anything that you're thinking about for this summer or later this ending of the spring that you might want to share?
I've got something that's a little outside the box. I'm going to say it's outside the box. It's not really, but I didn't think about it until one of my other staff members brought it up. So I'll give the credit elsewhere. But we're a ministry. We're in our second year of a reboot. We're a pretty small organization. We've got 6 student leaders. And we were supposed to have our first huge alumni and friends of the BSM banquet today. And so obviously that's not happening. And so we came up short on all of these goals we had set as far as our missions and everything else. And so one of the things we were really struggling to figure out what we were going to do to raise that amount of money. And we were sitting at a staff meeting, had no ideas. And we were like, why don't we just give it to our students? And we said, they're all in different states. They're all spread out. They can each do their own fundraiser, and let's just see how it goes. And so far it's gone really well. So some of them are doing like, you get to vote to choose my haircut for quarantine. You get to all this ridiculous stuff. And so just the releasing of creativity to our students instead of doing it on our own. So I don't know if that helps anybody else, but it's helped us.
Yeah. And I mean, that's been one of the neat and encouraging things about this crisis is some of the new ideas that have come out, and some of the ways that you guys are continuing to tackle ministry. It's been really encouraging to see. And kind of speaking of that, next week our Zoom call is going to be kind of around that idea of utilizing those ideas maybe that have come up as a result of new thinking and embracing technology, and what are some of those things that we've started doing during the coronavirus that we may be able to continue and keep using for greater gospel effectiveness beyond just this crisis. And so come on back next week, and we'll be discussing that. We're almost out of time. So just also, while we're kind of talking about summer missions and that was brought up, I want to give Sarah Farley just a couple minutes to share about some updates from the IMB related to summer missions projects.
Thanks, Bill. I'll make this real fast. First of all, thank you all for those of you who partner and send students with IMB around the world. We have field personnel across the world that are grieving, but excited to see just that the number of students are still interested in participating in missions. So that's exciting. And with that knowledge, we wanted to just continue to throw out ideas and throw out opportunities for students to engage the nations while they're all here stateside. So we know there's already a ton of great opportunities and choices out there, and we just want to continue to encourage you and your ministries and your students to learn about missions, to connect with each other and grow, and to learn about people groups and learn about the nations and connect with our field personnel, because we believe it's really important for students to engage with missionaries overseas. And so a lot of y'all been following us on social media or have already heard about our stateside summer. And the idea of stateside summer is most of our field personnel have to come back stateside for an opportunity where they get to engage churches, engage their communities, and engage the diaspora, which is the scattered, which our international students are a part of that. And so we have just put together some options. They're meant to be kind of a plug and play opportunities for you to kind of look at and see how these could fit already into some strategies that you may be kind of looking to develop for the summer. And we've even kind of designed it to where it could play out to the fall and even beyond. So I want to encourage you guys, you can take a look at that. You can go to imb.org/stateside summer. And it's just a quick form where you'll get an email with the summer packet. Or you can just send me a message, or Van Simmons. Van is on this call as well. We would love to connect with you guys and even just help encourage you on how you can get your students connected. One of the things I do want to just kind of say is about our digital teams. We've had a couple of states already kind of commit to getting these digital teams going with their students, and that involves them designing with our student strategists overseas about connecting with missionaries and having conversations weekly or bi-weekly. All of our Nehemiah teams are going to be engaged in digital teams as well. And so this is just another opportunity for them to kind of make that global piece and then find their people groups here in America and reach out with them. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out as just a broad kind of vision that we just really want to continue to come alongside you, and Van can chime in, but we believe that students are a huge part of God's plan to reach the nations, and we just want to continue to support and encourage and equip and train and resource you guys. So a lot of our options just are about resources and training options. And if you are interested in having someone come and help train even further, a lot of our stateside personnel are here and available to do that. Even if it comes to some virtual training, we're willing to kind of help facilitate that with various strategies. And I do want to do a plug for John real quick with the Great Exchange. One of the things that we're encouraging students to do is a family and friends challenge this summer with Who's Your One, and sharing the gospel. And so John Deans does a lot of incredible work with the Great Exchange, and just want to encourage you to figure out how to continue to do that digitally, because that's so important, and we really want to encourage that. And the last two things I want to just shout out there, hands-on for the fall is still on and still going. We still have a plan right now to send students. So our deadline for hands-on semester is June 1st. And so we want to encourage you guys, if you have students that are interested in doing semester, we know the fall looks we're not quite sure what the fall is going to look like, but we are just moving ahead in hopeful anticipation. We have, I believe, Van, correct me if I'm wrong, already 33 students in the pipeline for hands-on for the fall, and we still have open opportunities, so we're excited. Van, were you gonna say something?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. And then Journeyman, our go-to years Journeyman program is still going. We have 150 opportunities. So the IMB is hiring. As your students are graduating in June, Brad Kinney in our office is developing some assessment resource pieces for students that are interested in going 2 years Journeyman. And we want to just encourage you guys to continue to push the message that we have spots to fill for Journeymen, and we are sending. In fact, we just had a virtual candidate conference where Journeymen were presented their opportunities and options to pick their jobs, and they're currently doing interviews with the field teams for jobs. So we just want that message to be very clear and out there that we are still sending students.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah, will you drop your email address in the chat? That way, if folks have any questions or want to follow up with you, they've got easy access to that. And if you have students that, if your campus ends up making an announcement that they're going to be all online in the fall, and you have students that are like, I can't take another semester of online, then maybe taking a semester to do missions would be something they should think about. Just a couple other things I wanted to point out that are over there in the chat. There's a link to campusministry.org/global-project. That is another summer option that has kind of been birthed out of a lot of some other summer missions opportunities that have not been able to happen this summer. And so it's a opportunity for your students to gather with other students all over the U.S. for some training and encouragement to stay missional, to continue to grow in their relationship with Christ throughout the summer. So you can check out that website. Steve Shadrach is a part of that, as well as Paul Wooster are kind of the key leaders behind that. They've had a lot of interest. So I think it's going to be a great option for students to participate in the summer. And then also, Scott, you can see on there, he put his email address. And if any of you all are thinking, I would love to get some more training or have further conversations, Scott would be happy for you to reach out. Also, Steve put up the website for supportraisengsolutions.org, and that's their site, and you can go there to find more information and connect with them. And so just wanted to make sure that you guys had access to those resources. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. We hope you'll join us next week. And then I'm going to leave this up for a while. So if there's any of the information in the chat that you wanted to grab, Sarah and Van have also shared some other websites related to some of those opportunities that Sarah just shared. So go ahead and write that stuff down or copy and paste it onto your computer. And grateful for you guys. We'll be continuing to pray for you all and hope to see you next week. Thanks.